Stacktastic, the weekly web show for the avid comic book reader and those who aspire to become so. As I explained last week, it's the holiday season and therefore a great time to buy some comics for others or yourself. And one of the questions I get asked the most is, Grace, I love this particular comic book movie and would love to get into the comics, but where do I start? Well, last week I got you ready for the upcoming X-Men movie Days of Future Past, and so today I'm going to get you all set up for Man of Steel. And if you think it's hard to get Superman right on the silver screen, believe me, it's no easier on the page. Yes, Superman might seem like a simple character on the surface, but it's that very simplicity that makes him one of the most complicated characters to write in comics or portray on screen. But just as Richard Donner, as well as Bruce Timm and Paul Dini got it right, so have a few comic book writers. And because he's such a complex thematic character, Superman actually happens to be one of my favorite superheroes, which is why his archetype figures so prominently in my own comic book, SUPURBIA, with issue number 2 hitting stores this week. Now let's talk Superman comics. Like Jean Grey, one of the most memorable things Superman ever did was die. Yes, back in 1992, when comic book deaths actually meant something, Superman sacrificed himself fighting a foe that was as invulnerable as he was. This was one of the first comic book events to reach beyond the comic book community and into the mainstream, earning DC a legion of new readers long before the New 52. And one of the best things about the death of Superman and its aftermath is that it's actually a good read. Plus, it introduced new elements into the Superman mythos that are still around to this day, such as the characters Superboy and Steel. Perhaps the only sour note is that Superman infamously was resurrected with long hair, and what would also become a disturbing trend, trying to make Superman cool. The entire story is told in 3 trades: The Death of Superman, World Without a Superman, and The Return of Superman. Unfortunately, the first 2 are out of print, but you can find them from buyers online. However, you can also wait for the awesome new omnibus collecting the whole shebang out in March 2013, which is, what do you know, right around when Man of Steel comes out. Now, because Superman is such a challenging character, he attracts some great writers. Not only will Scott Snyder be launching a new Superman title in 2013, but way back in the 1980s, none other than Alan Moore took a crack at the Man of Steel. And I think everyone would agree he hit a home run. My favorite Alan Moore Superman story is for the Man Who Has Everything, but of course they're all pretty good, and DC offers a nice collection called Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which is also the title of one of the classic stories included within. Another great writer to leave his mark on Superman is Mark Millar, who in 2003 turned America's hero into Russia's. See, Millar had the clever idea of exploring a world where Superman's rocket didn't land in Kansas, but rather the Soviet Union. Sadly, DC Comics published the story after a falling out with Millar, who left the publisher for Marvel in 2001. But Red Sun was still incredibly well received by both readers and the industry. I'd also like to note that it's a perfect example of why Elseworld stories are so compelling. It's a shame DC has decided not to continue with the imprint. And I've got one more great writer for you, Grant Morrison. His All-Star Superman is incredibly unique, which isn't surprising considering the All-Star line was overseen by comic book legend Bob Schreck and former Vertigo editor Brendan Montclair. Morrison and Frank quietly recapture the magic of their new X-Men collaboration, which is saying something. Now, it's widely known that The Long Halloween and Dark Victory heavily influenced Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. But did you know that the same creative team behind those stories have also done a Superman story? Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's Superman for All Seasons resonates with the same charm, simplicity, and emotional punch as the Man of Steel himself. Plus, it just happens to be my favorite Superman story. Finally, I've got 2 stories for you that aren't Superman stories strictly speaking, but feature him prominently and in good form. The first is the world's finest story by Dave Gibbons, who is famous for drawing Watchmen, but this time takes on the writing duties. He's paired with an equally good artist, though, Steve Rude, who makes it seem as if he was born to draw Superman. Here, the Joker and Lex Luthor decide to trade cities, so Batman and Superman must do the same. The second story is Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross, another Elseworld story. Ross actually came up with the idea, set in the future, and was inspired by Watchmen. I'm happy to say that Kingdom Come lives up to those aspirations. So if you're looking to read some good Superman stories, those are my recommendations. Links to purchase these titles are in the video description, or you can always head to your local comic book store, and I'm sure they'll be happy to help you find them. Plus, while you're at the store or online, I hope you'll pick up SUPURBIA number 2. My Superman archetype, Sovereign, is trying to keep his reformed supervillain girlfriend out of jail, while Eli finally meets his mother's tribe in Mongolia. Is his dad right to be concerned? I've included links on where you can buy SUPURBIA in the video description as well. And that's this week's Stacktastic. I'm Grace Randolph for Think About the Ink, and hope to see you back on Friday for Between the Pages. Until then, happy reading.